Hey guys, I'd like to talk about a character I created, Rocket Girl, a few years back for Comic-Con Revolution. So let me talk about it. And her name actually isn't Rocket Girl. At Comic-Con Revolution, they call her Jetpack Jules. But some friends of mine years ago at Atomic Crunch, Atomic Crunch, yeah, I need some of that cereal. Atomic Crush events put on Comic-Con Revolution in Ontario, California. And they wanted a mascot. And so uh, they commissioned me to come in and help develop that character. And that was a lot of fun. So using my character design process, I started thinking about what would be a character to lead the revolution, you know? And this is ultimately what I settled on, which I always called Rocket Girl, loosely inspired by the Rocketeer. But we wanted to give her kind of that, you know, 30s, 40s, uh, aviator style. And so I thought it'd be fun to work that out. Well, this is obviously kind of the finished design for her, and I'd like to talk about where she came from. Again, Rocketeer, such an awesome character design. Love that stuff by Dave Stevens. The artwork is so beautiful. And I wanted to make my own version. Of course, I started looking at different images of different, actresses and characters and costume styles. And this is something I do quite a lot when developing, whether it's a character or a costume. I like looking at reference images. I don't have the ability to just invent things from my mind. I'm heavily inspired by the things I see. And actually, one of my favorite parts of the process is going out and looking at reference images. And so I gather those images. Yeah, I use Pinterest. Put up a whole bunch of pictures on Pinterest so I can look at them while I'm developing a character. Um, Here's a funny looking armature. This is a little something I use to help me develop a pose. So I have these little Bandai models that I can pose, a few of them up there. And I kind of pose them into the rough um, pose that I want. And then in Photoshop or with my rough sketch, I'll put photos and use these little Franken design elements to help me develop that pose and that person because I need something to look at. Like I said, I'm not good at just inventing it from scratch. And so I'll use this as a reference image as I kind of develop my sketches. Then I get into rough sketches. A few of these are on paper. A lot of times now I use my iPad where I just sketch and doodle and try to figure out what I'm looking for. In this case, it's kind of working on her rocket pack, working on some poses and some flying poses, looking at her face. Does she wear goggles? What does she look like? And then I take those and I start to refine them and develop a more refined sketch. Now, this wasn't going to be a cartoon style as much as I wanted to have more of a realistic look. So I started working on developing her attributes. And then here are a couple more of those rough sketches later turned into more articulated poses where they've, she's standing one way. You see another better view of her rocket pack. You see some of her belt and other design, her boots, her goggles, and so on. So you get an idea of what she really looks like. And this was going into a character sheet, a model sheet to show off what she looks like. And here is some coloring with some little color swatches. And this is actually something that they've used for years now, handing off to other artists, because one of the fun things to see each year at Comic-Con Revolution is their other artists interpreting what Jetpack Jules looks like. And so this little model sheet goes out and they use it to help them draw their version. This is where you can see some of the rougher sketches where I worked out the pose for that very first poster we made for her. So I really like the idea of her, heroic being propped up on the top of something, carrying the Comic-Con Revolution flag, pulling back her glasses, and so on. That kind of evolved into a salute and her, join the revolution. Here's one of the later versions I did of her. I wanted to show her flying through the sky with an old World War II vintage plane. And this, again, following that same process, looking at reference images, figuring out my model, figuring out the pose. But with the benefit of working in Procreate, I can sketch and draw and then recompose those sketches on layers. And that's very helpful when composing a poster. And so here you see kind of a rough development, pencil stage at the end, and then later on a finished colored painted version at the end. So that's kind of a rough idea of how she was developed. And where she goes from here, it's up to everyone else. So I encourage you to develop your own characters. There's no problem in being inspired by others and looking at what others are doing, but then tweak it a little bit. Add your personality, add some unique thing that makes it yours, and have fun with it. Oh yeah. And that whole process got turned into a little how to draw booklet that I made. You can find it on my website, How to Draw the Scullin Way.